Magic is not a fairy tale. It is an operational language of reality, a set of techniques that bend probability, reroute causality, and make the improbable habitual, if you know how to speak it. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you, step by patient step, how those techniques work, why they were hidden, and why every initiation you think of as myth is actually an instruction manual for rewiring the world itself. First, understand the simplest form of how magic alters reality: alignment. It sounds boring, but it's brutally effective. Alignment of intention, emotion, pattern, and action. Intention is the target. Emotion is the fuel. Pattern is the code you write into your body and surroundings. Action is the physical movement that makes the invisible visible. Alone, a thought is vapor. Add a body that believes, a ritual that encodes the desire, and a repeatable pattern that the subconscious can follow, and that vapor condenses into consequence. Consequence. Belief is not decoration. Belief is the lock and key that secures your signal into the machine of reality. When your conscious mind says, "I want X," but your body, your habits, your moods, your small daily choices whisper something else, the signal scrambles. The result? Weak, half-formed shifts that fizzle before they appear. But when your intention, emotion, and pattern all harmonize, when your body, your speech, and your environment all point to the same possibility, you create resonance. Resonance amplifies probability like a tuning fork amplifies sound. That amplification is the mechanism. It is how the improbable turns into the probable. Now, let's break that mechanism into the first practical steps you can understand without robes or nonsense. Step 1. Define the specific outcome and feel it as if it's real. Not wishy-washy, "I want more money," but "I will receive a clear, traceable opportunity by the 15th, and when it comes, I will say yes." Feel the body memory of that outcome. Where in your chest it lives, what your breathing does, the slight tilt of your face when it happens. Step 2, bind that felt image to a pattern, a ritual, a sigil, a repeated action, a sound, a place. The form you choose is less important than the precision with which you charge it. Step 3, create environmental repetition. A small action you repeat daily that cues your subconscious and your social environment to the new possibility. Step 4. Remove inner contradiction. Excise the yeah buts, the secret doubts, the half-beliefs that leak energy away. If you don't, your magic collapses on itself because the universe always optimizes for coherence. It matches you to the version of reality that best fits your internal program. These are mechanics, not miracles. They are engineering applied to consciousness. But there are deeper laws, hidden, ancient, and unforgiving, that govern magic's use. And ignorance of them is where most people meet tragedy. Law 1, like attracts like. Your inner temperature attracts corresponding outer states. Want rage and scarcity? Nourish fear and scarcity internally. Want calm and flow? Build scenes of calm until your mind maps that state as normal. Law 2. Specificity trumps vagueness. The universe is not a post office that accepts happiness as an address. Address it clearly. Law 3. Rhythm matters. Timing is not superstition, it's resonance with cycles. Moon, tide, circadian, socio-political. A ritual launched into a cadence will ride that current far faster than one cast in random noise. Law 4, proportional cost. Everything takes something. Attention sorts reality, and attention has a cost. If you invest deeply in one timeline, you close others. Law 5, symbolic literacy is mandatory. The subconscious reads symbol, pattern, and myth the way malware reads code. Symbols execute commands. Ignore these and you will produce noise, not magic. This is where danger lives, not in the fantastical monsters of horror stories, but in mismatched signals. When your desire is one thing and your ritual another, you invite chaos, partial manifestations, backfires, side effects that masquerade as coincidence until it's too late. People who treat ritual like a shopping list end up with the cashier's mistakes, small, annoying, but persistent. But the history of this work is littered with much worse. For centuries, elite orders knew the rules because they wrote them. They recorded not fairy tales but functional experiments, recipes of symbol, timing, and sacrifice that produced real-world consequences. You want examples? Open the pages of the Renaissance occultists and you find scribes who kept methodical logs of ritual results, times, phases of the moon, the exact phrasing used, the emotional state recorded, the observed effects. They weren't trying to win an argument with the church. They were running controlled trials on causality using the language they had: prayer, sigil, and sacrifice. In Egypt, certain priesthoods encoded rituals into temple design, geometry as instruction manual. In Babylon, incantations carved into clay were not mere prayers but algorithms meant to nudge the bureaucratic gods who ran fate. The Grimoires of the medieval period, books that later burned in public but survived in private, contained beneath their esoterica practical logs. At the third hour, on a Tuesday, with incense of cedar, this sign was drawn and the following change occurred. That is experimental protocol. They were measuring. Then why were these texts hidden, lost, or destroyed? Because knowledge that allows individuals to direct outcomes removes the monopoly on power. If a guild, a king, or a priesthood can no longer rely on the dull predictability of a populace, control erodes. Secrets become weapons. So, what did those in power do? They scapegoated the practice with fear, bound it to heresy, and relegated it to the realm of superstition while they secretly applied its rules whenever it served them. This is the uncomfortable truth. Religions, secret societies, and occult groups did not hide magic because it didn't work, they hid it because it did. They feared democratization of that power, and the clerical institutions, ever efficient at moral panic, publicly denounced what they privately used. Look at the pattern. Rituals, rites of passage, elite initiations, these are not merely identity markers, they are training modules. The Mithraic mysteries taught discipline and symbolic literacy. The Eleusinian mysteries centered initiation around seasonal cycles and ensured elite cohesion. Ancient Egypt's priesthood wove practical cosmology into civic life. Who controlled the temple controlled the code the populace lived by. Even medieval monasteries anonymized the knowledge, copying texts, obscuring lines with marginalia, embedding practical instructions inside allegory so an uninitiated reader would call it a parable, while an initiated copyist would pull the operational thread. And when those secrets were threatened, they defended them with blood, burning books, killing dissenters, creating legal frameworks that criminalized inquiry. Power protects itself. So, what about rituals that worked? Not all rituals are theatrics. Some are engineered systems. A well-crafted ritual has 5 functional components: intention, a clear target; syntax, the words and symbols that map to meaning; rhythm, breath, chant, and timing; environment, objects, scent, light; and reinforcement, a repetition schedule to habituate the body and social environment. Remove any of these and the signal weakens. Put them together and you have a closed loop that trains the subconscious and aligns external probabilities until the pattern of success became statistically more likely. That is institutional magic, applied at scale. Now for darker accounts, the very pages that made rulers tremble, rituals that aimed at the manipulation of individuals, love, loyalty, fear. The historical record, where it's honest, shows many such experiments, from binding spells in folk pages to more sophisticated workings recorded by occultists. The method was the same. Induce an emotional charge in the subject, or in yourself, while creating a pattern that traps attention on a desired outcome. Attention is the currency here. When you divert a person's attention habitually toward a narrative, this person is untrustworthy, this leader is infallible, you have, in effect, trained their reality. These are not metaphors. These are social engineering protocols using symbol as input. Secret societies learned to weaponize this, create symbols that encode obedience, teach rituals that recalibrate moral priorities, and cultivate initiation traumas that bind allegiance through shared emotional experience. That is the psychology of power, dressed as theurgy. Charming. Charming. And yet, the same techniques can be used for liberation, which is why they were suppressed. Those who benefit from control did not want emancipation taught as a craft. They wanted myth, controllable stories instead. This leads to the inevitable cost of using magic badly or selfishly. There are immediate risks. Psychological destabilization when you bind intense emotion to an outcome and it fails. Social risks. Alienation when your timeline shifts away from your community. Metaphysical narratives. The belief that something answers you, and the danger of misinterpreting coincidence as pact. But the deepest cost is moral, the corrosion of responsibility. When you can steer outcomes, the temptation is to externalize blame. It worked because I was owed. They deserved it. The method just removes them from my path. That mindset erodes empathy because you start to see people as variables rather than souls. Historically, those who leaned into such entitlements, magicians with a hunger for dominance, often paid with their sanity, their relationships, or their lives. Accounts survive of initiates who lost themselves in the practice. Obsession narrowed their field of attention until nothing outside the pursuit mattered. They misread patterns, amplified confirmation bias, and eventually collapsed into the outcomes they feared most. This is the terror no textbook will tell you. Magic multiplies the nature of the practitioner. It amplifies what is already there. If you are compassionate, it magnifies compassion. If you are petty, it weaponizes pettiness into small tyrannies. So why learn it at all? Because, when understood ethically, magic is empowerment. Disciplined attention that aligns you with your life instead of splintering your agency across other people's narratives. It is the art of steering through the web of possible timelines with responsibility, clarity, and reverence for cost. But make no mistake, to practice it is to accept consequence. To step into the ritual room is to sign with your attention. We are, every one of us, already practitioners. Our habits are spells. Our slogans are incantations. Our brands are sigils. The question is, who wrote your script? Do you want it to be them or you? In Part 2, we will map the precise rituals, the coded symbols, and the safety protocols the orders taught their initiates, so you can choose with eyes open. Power with responsibility, or power as a mirror of your worst impulses. For now, remember this. Magic is not magic, it is method. It is not myth, it is mechanics. And if you handle it without humility, it will handle you.
For now, remember this. Magic is not magic, it is method. It is not myth, it is mechanics. And if you handle it without humility, it will handle you. So let's open the ledger the old orders kept locked, not to give you a cheat code for domination, but to hand you a map, one that shows routes to empowerment and the caution signs at every fork, because knowledge without caution is an unlocked blade. First, the framework the initiates used: clear, repeatable, and deliberately boring in its discipline. They taught a 4-stage protocol for any practical working that transforms desire into event. Stage 1, cleansing and calibration. Remove noise. This isn't theater. It's about lowering entropy in your system and reducing interference. Clean your space, yes, but more importantly, quiet your daily rituals that leak attention. Compulsive scrolling, half-sleeping conversations, habitual rage. Replace one small loop with a stabilizing loop, 5 slow breaths in the morning with eyes closed, and a precise phrase that anchors your intent. Not to summon anything, but to send a coherent signal. Stage 2, encoding. Choose the language that will speak to your subconscious and the culture around you. Is it a simple visual sigil you draw once a day, a short chant repeated in the shower, a small object you touch before speaking? The medium is less sacred than the fidelity, how consistently you deliver it. Stage 3, charging. Amplify the pattern with emotional focus, the part most people want to skip because it feels like work. You must feel the outcome as a lived memory for a sustained minute. Not fantasize, but embody. Notice posture, breath, the exact micro-expression of success. Stage 4, release and integration. Enact an ordinary action that continues the work in the world. Send an email, call an old contact, place your foot on a new path. Ritual without integration is like a map without walking. It only points. These stages are deceptively simple, because what matters is repetition and coherence, not complexity. Now, the old orders layered safety protocols so the initiate didn't fracture. Protocol 1. Never aim a working at a person's will. Influence yourself. Model attractiveness to others through behavior. Calibrate your life. Don't try to rewrite another's internal compass. That line, targeting another's will, is where ethics dissolves into abuse and where history stacked corpses. Protocol 2, temporal escrow. Don't lock a demand into an impossible deadline. Instead, set windows and checkpoints. The universe resists brute force. It responds to windows of alignment. Protocol 3, accountability partners. The initiates never worked alone for long. They kept at least one witness to their process to counter isolation-driven delusion. If you plan an experiment with consciousness, have someone to read your log who can call foul when your ego dresses disappointment as success. Protocol 4, grounding and release. Daily practices that let charged emotion dissipate into mundane life so obsession can't calcify. Walk, scrub a plate, sleep without reviewing outcomes. Ritual needs a pressure valve. Sounds almost domestic, doesn't it? But that's the point. The old work was never meant to be dramatic forever. It was meant to change the life you live between the dramatic moments. Now, let's talk symbols. The coded language the subconscious obeys when the conscious mind is too proud to listen. Symbols are not mystical lucky charms. They are compression algorithms. A sigil compresses intention into a single glyph your mind can hold without commentary. A color palette primes mood. Incense alters attention. An arrange altar arranges cognitive priorities. It says this matters in a format the inner world reads like a drummer hearing a beat and aligning. Alignment. How to craft a working symbol without copying secret signs from someone else's order. Use personal compression. Pick a single, concise sentence that names the outcome in the present tense. Turn it into a compact visual by removing repeating letters, combining remaining characters into an abstract mark, and stylizing until it feels like a single image. Charge it with emotion for a minute, then hide it or burn the paper as a transfer. This is procedural description at the algorithm level. Notice I'm giving you the principle, not a step-by-step blueprint to force another's will. Above all, symbols must be private or communal. Public sigils diffuse power into noise. Private sigils focus it. Historically, orders taught apprentices how to read scale in ritual, how to escalate a working from a micro-practice to a communal rite without inviting catastrophe. Micro-practices move individuals. Communal rites move institutions. A single person's changed habits can open a new career path. A synchronized community ritual can change markets or political moods. This is why small groups guarding practice sometimes allied with larger power. They discovered leverage. But leverage attracts predators, which brings us to clandestine manipulations and the records you asked for. Not to emulate, but to understand why secrecy took root. Secret societies, from the medieval confraternities to early modern Freemasons and their shadowed cousins, created layered knowledge protocols. Outer teachings for identity and belonging, inner teachings with practical techniques, and innermost teachings reserved for those who demonstrated moral steadiness. Why such layers? Because knowledge could break novices who lacked frameworks to handle results. There are ledger notes, dry, clinical entries about initiates who miscarried under pressure. Success without humility produced fanaticism, and fanaticism produced fracture. So why did religions conspire to bury some of this? Convenience, hypocrisy, and self-preservation mostly. Organizing social cohesion is easier when miracles are monopolized. Institutions can centralize explanation and tax compliance. But there is another reason. Truths that dissolve a population's sense of helplessness are destabilizing. They free people from dependence on gatekeepers. The church, the temple, the throne, each in its own way, feared the citizen with a practiced inner life. This is why ritual language mutated into moral language. Don't meddle became sin. Don't train became hubris. Labels shifted from descriptive to prescriptive, and eventually the ritual itself was recast as parable. Meanwhile, the elite kept the practical parts in private libraries, writing marginalia in code so the initiate could reconstruct the method if needed. Now, since you asked for accounts where magic actually produced measurable change, note this with humility. Records are messy. Successes often look like coincidence until repeated. That is why trained orders kept logs, dates, weather, participant mood, instruments used, and the observed outcome. One recurring pattern in those logs: correlation between emotional coherence and outcome strength. Calm, focused groups produced clearer effects than frenzied ones. Strong emotion amplified results, but made them erratic. So the practical teaching became clear. Discipline modulates power. Discipline is the soul's brake and accelerator simultaneously. Without it, you drive blindfolded into possibility. With it, you steer. Let's examine two types of historical workings to illustrate ethical contrast without giving you a weaponized manual. First, the civic ritual. Celebratory rites to secure harvests, safe passages, or civic health. These were procedural, public, and regulated. They coordinated behavior across populations, producing predictable shifts by aligning thousands of small choices. Second, the personal rite. Private acts to resolve grief, to focus the mind for a trial, to heal an illness. These relied on the individual's coherence and were rarely forceful. Both produced change. The first scales socially, the second internally. The difference in moral contour is intention and consent. Civic rituals were social contracts. Personal rites were private agreements between practitioner and inner life. Then,
There were the darker experiments, attempts at seduction, fate binding, the control of enemy hearts. These appear in scattered grimoires and in court records where accusations of witchcraft were a political weapon. They teach the same lesson we have seen again and again. Attempting to override another's agency corrupts the practitioner and invites reciprocal harm. So the old admonition, never steer another's will, is both ethical and practical. Systems tend to equilibrate, and equilibrium often costs more than short-term gain. Human hearts are thorny. Trying to flatten them damages your palms. Now the terrifying cost, because we promised honesty. Magic, when sincere, will reveal the shape of your soul. It is a mirror with magnifying glass. You will find strengths you wanted and flaws you hid. You will be tempted to accelerate what works and ignore the collateral. You will see how addiction to control is an easy trap. Once small successes prove possible, appetite grows. The ritual that begins as an alignment for health can morph into daily micro-manipulations for convenience. This is moral entropy. Counter it by ritualizing restraint. Create vows that limit scope. Work only for 3 months. Never target individuals without consent. Always place a releasing act at the end of a working. Make constraint part of your practice, not an afterthought. The orders forced novices into communal vows for a reason. Restraint trains moral muscle. There is also psychic backlash to consider. Many traditions speak of return, the idea that energy you cast will circle back amplified. Think of it as a principle of proportionality. What you push out, with the full force of your charged attention, tends to return to your life in some form. This is not primitive superstition. It's a psychological and social truth. If you weaponize attention, you create enemies, betray trust, and eventually find your own patterns reflected back in harder lessons. The last set of practical rules, safety in practice, are simple and uncompromising. Keep logs, keep a witness, keep boundaries, and keep humility. Logs force you to see pattern. A witness forces accountability. Boundaries prevent mission creep, and humility keeps you human. Add to that the mundane protections often omitted by romantic writers: proper sleep, nutrition, medical checkups, mental health support. Do not treat spiritual work as a substitute for therapy or medical care. If you are unstable, seek help before experimenting. If you are curious, proceed shallowly and responsibly. Now, to close the circle, what does mastery look like? Not omnipotence, not theatrical control. Mastery looks like clear-eyed agency. It looks like a person who can direct attention with discipline, who can change small timelines by habit, who can influence their world by aligning body, speech, and environment. Mastery is the art of becoming consistent. Mastery is the quiet power to refuse the narratives others script for you. And if you choose to walk this path, do it with ethics as your map. The old maxims endure for a reason. Do no harm, work for expansion, not dominance, honor consent, and practice restraint. These are not sentimentalities, they are structural safeguards. Finally, remember the deeper metaphysical humility. Whatever mechanics you learn, they are brushstrokes on an immense canvas. You will always be operating within a larger web of causes. Some things will not shift for you, and that refusal is not a punishment. It is evidence of limits that preserve balance. Respect those limits. Celebrate small changes, grieve losses, repair harm you cause, and never treat practice as a right to control outcome. If you leave here with one thing, let it be this: power without care is not power. It is decay. Power with care is stewardship. So choose. Choose the kind of person you want the magnifying glass of magic to reveal. In closing, know that the work is less glamorous than the myths, but far more consequential. Train yourself in small, honest practices. Build rituals that tie you to service and creativity. Keep companions who will speak truth to you. And when you test the edges of reality, do so like a scientist. Record, repeat, and revise. Magic, stripped of romance, is a craft of attention. It will demand patience, discipline, and moral courage. If you accept those terms, you will find the strange fruit of agency, not domination, but the capacity to live intentionally. If you refuse them, the lessons will find you anyway, in the form of unwanted consequences and the slow erosion of choice. This is the end of the lesson, the close of the ledger for now. Take what serves, discard what corrupts, and remember, the universe listens, but it keeps its own counsel. Be careful what you say to it.